The next thing I was going to talk about was the fact that powerful organizations are religious and base their decisions mostly on prophecies, especially the prophecies having to do with eschatology, because despite very few political commentators recognizing this fact, it is central to what is going on today in the world. Literally every dispute in politics does in some way circle back around to this. Then all of a sudden, on the New Thinking Aloud channel, Jeffrey Mishlove interviews Neil Grossman, and they discuss this very subject. That's what some people would call a coincidence, and some people would call it synchronicity. I'm thankful to Neil for making such a gargantuan effort on such a heavy topic, and I guarantee that he is 100% sincere, and I am absolutely obligated to urge everyone to recognize what Neil Grossman is saying, and that it is highly relevant. The average person may dismiss Neil as a lone individual living in a fantasy world which has no bearing on real life. And to those people, I would say that it is you who's living in a fantasy to willfully ignore such things. Neil thinks that he is proposing new ideas, but I think that he is accurately describing the mindset and goals of the people currently in charge, the people he blames. Neil doesn't know it, but he is 100% sincere in his support of the current state of the world, which is a result of generations of corrupt internationalist governments run by religious organizations. Jeffrey Mishlove, by the way, is a professional interviewer who throws in some strong counter-arguments in a polite way. He makes some great points. I suggest you subscribe to his channel. It's very informative and entertaining. When he talks about the leading edge of knowledge and discovery, he ain't lying. In the spirit of honesty, I'm going to try not to restrict my thoughts. I'm going to be highly critical. I do need to gloss over some issues because there's so much to say. I would write a 800-page book in response, but there's not enough time to do that. I'm just gonna stand on my soapbox here and just throw out some stuff. Also, I do think that I am qualified to put in my 2 cents.
With me is Dr. Neil Grossman, who is an emeritus associate professor of philosophy at the University of Illinois at Chicago. He is the author of Conversations with Socrates and Plato, How a Post-Materialist Social Order Can Solve the Challenges of Modern Life and Ensure Our Survival.
Ensure our survival. You heard the man. A post-materialist social order will ensure our survival.
But you seem to be suggesting that if we aren't able to make this transition in the relative near
short
term,
time, yeah,
not a million years from now, but in the next generation or two, the human race may not survive.
Correct. I feel that.
The actual time frame that he states is 20 years. So what social order do we have to adopt within 20 years in order to survive?
This book describes a world order, not just one part of the world. So it's the whole world has to be in on this or it's not going to happen.
But I'm under the impression you're taking this spiritual concept of one mind and translating it into a social structure, which maybe it's not socialism, but it seems a lot like socialism.
Yeah. I don't care what you call it.
Yeah.
If you don't care what I call it, then I'm going to call it communism. Although socialism and communism were originally interchangeable terms, there are 2 general variants of socialism. There's National Socialism, infamously implemented by Nazi Germany, and there's International Socialism, commonly referred to as communism. The Communist Party of China is argued by many to be closer to a Nazi system because they're highly nationalistic. Internationalism, by contrast, is the promotion of all groups of people in the world to become a single coherent group. But the strategies implemented by all internationalist governments today include the actual legal enforcement of the dissolution of all groups and identities in hopes that once there are no identities left, everyone will magically get together and sing Kumbaya and we will finally achieve heaven on earth a utopia, an eschaton, world peace. This is precisely the social order Neil Grossman wants. He wants a small group of people to control everything, and he wants them to redistribute the resources. He is promoting internationalist socialism or communism.
And I'm told that the Earth right now can produce enough food to feed everybody. So the problem that why isn't that happening? It's because of the greed and personal ambition of a few people who control the distribution of goods.
Yeah.
Now something's got to replace capitalism because it's going to destroy the planet.
First of all, I know you're just misusing the term capitalism. The definition of capitalism is the lack of government involvement in markets. And I think we can all agree that one of the main problems is that huge corporations work in conjunction with the government in an unfair way, which is not even close to being capitalism. Whatever term you want to use, the solution is not to give the government more power in hopes that they will solve all of your problems. Because they won't. To be honest, because we're not trying to be polite right now. We're not trying to escape honesty, to be politically correct. Some groups of people breed like rabbits. So what are you going to do? Control who has children and when they have children? Yes, that is what you're going to do. The highly managed markets we have now led to an explosion in population. And when those managed markets crash, it's going to be a crash in population. 10 million people packed in like sardines into a single city. Food trucks go in and out every day. If this infrastructure stops for even a single day, that's 10 million people without food for a whole day. You want to talk to me about redistribution via government management? You must be out of your goddamn mind.
Are you saying, for example, that heaven is socialist?
A lot of times people don't want to use the term communism because it has such a bad connotation. Because as a secular, anti-religion form of government, it has massacred hundreds of millions of human beings. Yeah, sounds like heaven. A lot of times, people who advocate for communism are honest and say that's what they want, but mostly communists say those times weren't real communism because the people in charge were not perfect. Therefore, communism would totally work as long as the human beings in charge were perfect. You know, if you make a system that's based off of it requires people to be perfect, I don't think it's going to work because people aren't perfect. You know what I mean? I think the whole concept of capitalism is that it's meant for people that are imperfect. Also, it's not something that is enforced by a government, okay? It just happens. So, this is precisely Neil Grossman's strategy to put perfect human beings in charge. And perfect human beings don't exist, so Neil's strategy is to create perfect human beings by inducing near-death experiences in them.
When people come back from the near-death experience, their values change 180. It grates against them to see deception and lying in any form. There's no template for lying. And we have the economics of a country and the politics run by honest people, by people who don't lie.
Sorry to burst your bubble, Neil, but having a near-death experience doesn't make you perfect. Asceticism doesn't make you perfect. A lot of the elites who lead an ascetic lifestyle think they're perfect, think they're better than all those lowly beings scrounging for a few cents to survive. People don't lose the ability to lie even after they've had a near-death experience. The near-death experience in many cases reinforces what the person already believed and also their behavior. People are so sure that it is the experience of death, and yet they also say that it is the increase of connectedness. Life is interconnectedness, not death. I do not embrace death. Death is the enemy. Brain activity sometimes increases sharply due to health issues. If you're alive right now, you did not experience death. Brain activity is a requirement for the vision. Health issues are not a requirement. I induced a near-death experience in myself using meditation, like some Buddhists do. If I wanted to, I would teach people how to induce a near-death experience using meditation. But I don't really want to. My purpose in life is to understand the vision I had and to use that knowledge to increase coherence among all humanity. That is why I think that no one should try to do what Neil is suggesting. You should not focus on visions. You shouldn't look to visions for answers, even if the vision gives you a really nice feeling. I felt that feeling, but I don't care, because the vision didn't change me at all. I was led to that experience because I am who I am. Everyone's got their own path, and everyone needs their own experiences. For some people, maybe that means having a vision, but my path right this second is to tell you that the vision is not the answer. Also, in what religion is heaven the same as the experience of death? The one mind set of beliefs is dependent upon the material body, and the death of that body in such beliefs has consequences on one's consciousness. Most religions are monist, and there is no distinction between so-called Eastern and Western religions. In the Bible, for example, heaven is a time period on earth. So calling it heaven on earth is redundant. I mean, do you believe in Revelation? Let's say you have a group of 1 billion people who all believe that a vision will ensure heaven on earth. Would you say that that religion would successfully lead to a heaven on earth scenario after having, let's say, 2,000 years to figure it out? Don't answer that. Also, if you believe that humanity can change its own fate and ascend in some way on a metaphysical level, how do you think that's going to happen unless most human beings are educated in a similar way as you and I have been educated? We collectively do not understand the laws of physics or anything like that. We are currently in a dark age, brought about on purpose. And this leads me to one of the main points I want to make. If 1,000 people did what you did and wrote a book calling for heaven on earth, then I would say maybe we're getting somewhere. And maybe you're going to be a spark that ignites the flame in the collective mind. But no matter how hard you wish for it, you will not force other people to get to that point. I mean, it's not like people don't want a utopia. Everyone wants a utopia. It's more like people want other people to make a utopia for them. People are trained to expect the government to do that for them. Let me ask a question. How is it that having a small group of people controlling everything align with the collective will? Even if that group of people were absolutely perfect, how is that interconnectedness? You cannot enforce spiritual coherence using the government. Name a single time in history that's happened, out of all the times it's been tried. And before all the National Socialist intellectuals start yapping their gums about Julius Evola, one could say that the basis for National Socialism in Germany was something called National Mysticism. By the way, I would rename Neil's social order International Mysticism. The entire German populace was well aware of these concepts. According to Carl Jung, a bunch of Germans were seeing visions of Wotan, and no one has argued that that was not organic. The government didn't cause that. The government was a result of that. Show me a single group of people now that have that kind of spiritual calling. Or at least wouldn't just dismiss you as being crazy because they've literally never heard anything like that before in their life. The correct response is that most people have literally never heard anything like that before in their life. Because a small religious group in support of international mysticism, who base their decisions on vision interpretation, who co-opt rich and powerful people with the use of entheogens so that they can reduce the quality of education in the world, so that they will remain in power, while they attempt to bring about an eschaton, even though that won't happen because that's not how things work. Unless you're a crazy elite in a weird cult that's had you brainwashed since childhood. So, with that being said, how is Neil going to be successful in his plan? If you guessed, he's planning on having powerful people take entheogens to convert them to international mysticism, then you get a gold star because that is the exact plan he has.
I think it is a game changer in society is the use of I think now they're called entheogens.
Entheogens. Or psychedelics.
Enablers of the divine. And this is what, you don't have to, go into some monastery for 25 years, and meditate or remove yourself from the world to have this kind of experience.
It doesn't matter how many CEOs you co-opt with entheogens because you can't enforce spiritual coherence using the government. You sound just like Joe Rogan. Joe the Big Toe Rogan. Are you affiliated with MAPS? That stands for Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies. Do you really not know what's going on? When I first listened to the interview, I was wondering how closely you were associated with MAPS. What you're suggesting is what they're working towards. And you sound like a spokesperson for MAPS. Your idea to have children raised in good environments is excellent. Your idea to educate people about spirituality and metaphysics is excellent. Where did you get your knowledge from? A university? Universities used to teach those subjects, but they aren't anymore. I know you talked about this being a materialist society, but the point I'm trying to make is that we're academia used to be monist, and that's kind of what you're promoting, just like me, is to go back to a monist academia, is to reverse this weird materialist, actually physicalist or postmodern cult, this religion that's taken over academia. That's one of the steps, okay, and I'm totally with you on that. The point I'm trying to make is that the stuff that we're talking about right now, stuff that you're talking about, stuff I'm talking about, completely discouraged today in academia, in education. So, because I recognize that your book and your plan are a good attempt at trying to get other people to learn what you've learned. I appreciate that you've acquired your knowledge and that you care for people and are making an effort. I can see how the near-death experience might seem like a fast track to success. If all we have is 20 years, then I'm on board. Might as well try something if we have nothing to lose. At this moment, civilization is somewhat stable, although we are heading downhill in a lot of different ways. I would not make this video unless I had an alternative to offer. I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. Let's engineer society the way Neil wants for 20 years. And then after 20 years, let's regroup and ask ourselves whether we achieved heaven on earth or everyone died in hellfire. If neither of those things happen, then start thinking about my alternative, because I don't think heaven on earth is something that will ever happen in the way one usually thinks of it. Of course, I still have a lot to figure out, but here's my alternative. If you are listening to this, then you must decide for yourself to lead by example. You must break the cycle by choosing to love everyone and everything unconditionally. Unfortunately, you will not be perfect because you must survive. Due to the state of reality, even if you try, You will not influence anyone else, and you will not save the world. But this really isn't about other people. This is about you. That's what it's always been about. I'm not being solipsistic. I'm saying that the collective is built upon the foundation of the individuals. You must be an ember which has the potential to ignite a flame. This is what I tell myself, and so far I'm sure that I'm right. It's a long road of education and contemplation. It really is 25 years in a monastery. Please don't go chasing visions and drugs in hopes that it will turn you into a better person. It will not. No person who has had any kind of vision knows where that vision came from or whether it is true. There's only one truth, which is the absolute, which is probably beyond human comprehension. I don't know if there's a word for it, which is more accurate than the term pure love. All we can do is try. But that's the whole point of life, isn't it? There will always be death, and there will always be demons, but ultimate victory is continually achieved with truth and honesty. This is the source of true power, because if you do this, then heaven will be achieved in here.